The late afternoon sun poured gold across the soft sands of the secluded beach. Waves whispered secrets to the shore, their rhythm calm, almost hypnotic, a stark contrast to the storm, brewing just a few feet away. Lily crouched near the water's edge, her small frame trembling as cruel laughter cut through the salty air. She had hoped for one peaceful evening away from the relentless teasing at school, yet here they were again, her so-called classmates surrounding her like predators circling prey. "You're pathetic," one sneered, shoving her backpack into the sand. "Why do you even bother showing up?" Another grabbed a handful of her hair, yanking her back, and the sting of humiliation burned deeper than any physical pain. Lily's eyes welled with tears, but she refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing her cry. Then, as if the world had suddenly shifted on its axis, he appeared. At first she didn't notice. Him, a figure moving effortlessly along the shoreline, tall, dark, and commanding. But the moment his gaze landed on the bullies, time seemed to slow. They froze mid-laugh, eyes widening. Every ounce of arrogance, every ounce of cruelty, was silenced by the intensity of his presence. He walked toward her, each step deliberate, controlled, exuding power that was both terrifying and magnetic. The sun caught the edges of his dark hair, slicked back perfectly, revealing sharp features and a jawline that could cut glass. Even in the sunlight, the subtle tattoos peeking from under his crisp black shirt hinted at danger, a life lived on the edge, far from ordinary. "Step back," he said, low and smooth, a sound that vibrated in Lily's chest. There was no question, no uncertainty. The bullies hesitated, then scattered, their laughter dying in the distance like leaves carried off by the wind. Lily's legs felt weak. She wanted to thank him, to speak, but words failed her. Before she could process anything, he leaned closer. The world around them, the waves, the sun, the mocking echoes of her tormentors, disappeared. His lips met hers, soft yet demanding, a kiss that spoke of years she didn't know existed. Shock and disbelief flooded her senses, a dizzying mix of fear and desire. Pulling back just slightly, his eyes locked with hers. "I've been in love with you for years," he confessed, the weight of his words grounding her even as her heart soared. Lily's mind raced. Who was this man? Why her? And why now? The sun dipped lower, painting the sky with streaks of fire. Waves lapped gently at their feet, a quiet witness to a moment that had changed everything. She didn't know if she should run or stay, if this was a dream or reality. All she knew was that the man standing before her was dangerous, mesmerizing, and utterly unforgettable. And somehow, he had chosen her. The wind swept across the shoreline, carrying with it the salty tang of the sea and the fading echoes of cruelty. Lily's body trembled, not from the cold, but from the shock of what had just happened. His lips, firm yet intoxicating, still lingered in her memory. Her chest heaved as she tried to make sense of the impossible. A stranger, impossibly handsome and dangerous, had just kissed her and confessed his love. She glanced around the beach, half expecting someone to step forward to explain this moment away, but the bullies were long gone. Their laughter, their mockery, now replaced with the lingering shadow of his presence. He was no longer by her side. The sudden absence left a hollow ache inside her. It was as though the world had shifted, and a new, terrifyingly beautiful reality had taken its place. Lily's mind raced. Who was he? A man like that didn't exist in her world. A world of quiet cafes, cramped apartments, and muted dreams. And yet, here he had appeared, powerful, untouchable, and intensely personal. She sank to the sand, knees pressed to her chest, heart pounding in a rhythm she had never felt before. The waves rolled gently, teasing the edges of her hair. She touched her lips as if to confirm they were still hers, the memory of his touch almost painful in its intensity. Every rational thought screamed at her to leave, to escape, yet something primal held her in place. His words echoed. In her mind, "I've been in love with you for years." Lily's curiosity battled with her fear. She didn't know how to find him or if she even could. The Man had disappeared into the shadows of the sunset, leaving her with nothing but questions, and a heart suddenly too large for her chest. And then, almost instinctively, she noticed the small details he had left behind. The faint scent of his cologne still clung to the air, a mix of cedarwood and something darker, more forbidden. The footprints in the sand, long and deliberate, leading back to where he had vanished. It was absurd, yet she felt compelled to follow them, to chase the unknown, even as the world whispered warnings in her ear. A shiver ran down her spine as she rose to her feet. The beach, once a place of solitude, now felt charged with danger and possibility. Somewhere out there he existed, mysterious, untouchable, a man whose very presence could upend her world. Lily didn't understand it yet, but her life had changed. The girl who once blended into the background, who endured cruelty in silence, was now caught in a storm of desire, intrigue, and peril she had never imagined. And deep down she knew one truth: she would see him again. Because some connections, no matter how impossible, refused to be ignored. The morning light filtered through the thin curtains of Lily's small apartment, spilling across a room that smelled faintly of coffee and old books. The beach incident felt like a dream, surreal, and impossible, yet the memory of his lips pressed against hers refused to fade. She shook her head, trying to ground herself in the ordinary, but every sound, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant chatter of neighbors, even the soft tick of her clock, reminded her of the emptiness that stretched across her life before him. Her phone buzzed insistently on the bedside table, breaking the fragile illusion of normalcy, as a text from her best friend popped up. "You okay?" "You looked distracted yesterday," Lily typed back. A vague reply, "I'm fine," though her fingers trembled. She knew she couldn't tell anyone about him, about the man who appeared out of nowhere and upended her quiet, predictable life. Outside, the city moved on without pause. Street vendors called out. Children laughed as they chased balls along cracked sidewalks, and cars honked in impatient bursts. Lily dressed quickly, pulling a loose sweater over her blouse and tying her hair in a messy bun. She moved through her apartment like a ghost, performing mundane tasks with mechanical precision. Washing dishes, watering the tiny plants on her windowsill, making a pot of coffee that cooled too quickly, in the rush of her thoughts. At work, she blended into the background as always. Colleagues chatted, phones rang, printers. Word. Life carried on as though nothing remarkable had ever happened. And yet Lily's mind kept returning to the man on the beach, the stranger who had kissed her and left a crack in her. Ordinary world. Each laugh of a coworker, each passing glance seemed muted, less vibrant than the memory of him. She caught herself staring at the window during a meeting, watching the sunlight dance across the rooftops, imagining the shadow of his figure walking along some distant street. Who was he? Why her? How could a man so magnetic, so dangerous, exist just beyond the reach of her? Ordinary life? The questions gnawed at her, relentless and unyielding. Even in her routines, she felt the echoes of him, an unexpected brush of air that reminded her of his cologne, a shadow passing too quickly that sparked a shiver of recognition. Lily realized, with both fear and fascination, that her life had changed irreversibly. The mundane, once comforting, now felt constricting, a cage she no longer wanted to inhabit. And yet, a part of her clung desperately to normality, to the predictable rhythm of work and home, because she knew deep down that stepping too close to him would mean stepping into a world of power, danger, and desire she was unprepared to navigate. But the pull was irresistible. The memory of that kiss, his voice low and commanding, lingered, like a secret promise. "I've been in love with you for years." Lily couldn't escape him, not even in the quiet hum of her ordinary life. The storm had arrived, and whether she wanted it or not, it was already changing everything. The evening air was thick with the scent of rain and exhaust as Lily left work. Her mind still haunted by the memory of his kiss. She tried to convince herself it was a one-time illusion, a fantasy the universe had conjured to torment her with desire she could never claim. And yet, she couldn't deny the way her pulse quickened whenever she thought of him. As she walked through the bustling city streets, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. Hesitant, she answered. "Are you alone?" The voice was deep, velvet dark, commanding. Her heart skipped. She knew it. Instantly, there was no mistaking him. Yes, she stammered, the words barely audible. "Good. Wait outside the cafe on 7th and Main. 10 minutes. Before she could respond, the line went dead. Her stomach twisted with apprehension, but her curiosity, the same force that had drawn her to the beach, propelled her forward. The cafe was dimly lit, the scent of roasted coffee beans mixing with the sharp tang of rain. She scanned the room, and there he was, leaning casually against a pillar, the shadows accentuating his sharp features. He wore a tailored black suit, perfectly fitted, sleeves revealing, just enough of the intricate tattoos creeping up his neck. He exuded danger, confidence, and power, the kind that made the world around him seem smaller, weaker. "You came," he said simply, his eyes dark and unreadable, but his gaze alone made her knees weak. I didn't know if I should," Lily whispered, her voice trembling. "That's the point," he said, stepping closer. The air between them was electric, charged with unspoken promise and peril. "I wanted to see if you were brave enough to step into a world that could consume you, or protect you. Depends on your choice." He didn't elaborate, but she could feel the weight of his words, the unspoken threat, the subtle invitation into a life she had only glimpsed in dreams and nightmares. Every instinct screamed for her to flee, yet her feet remained rooted. "You're dangerous," she breathed. "Dangerous? Perhaps. Powerful? Definitely. And I've been watching you, waiting for the moment when I could finally protect what's mine," he said, his lips curling into a shadow of a smile. In that moment, Lily glimpsed a life she had never imagined, luxury mixed with peril, desire, wrapped in danger, and a man whose very presence promised both ecstasy and chaos. The world she had known, with its quiet rhythms and muted predictability, seemed fragile compared to this dark, intoxicating reality, and she realized, with a jolt of both fear and longing, that she didn't want to leave. Because some forces were irresistible, and some men, like him, were impossible to ignore. The night had fallen like velvet over the city, wrapping every street and alley in shadows. Lily hurried through the quiet side streets, clutching her coat tighter against the chill. Her thoughts a whirlwind of the impossible. The man on the beach, the cafe, the taste of danger and desire that clung to him. She hadn't expected to see him again. Not so soon. Not in the dim glow of the city. Lights, but fate had other plans. A sudden flash of movement caught her eye. He stepped from the shadows, sleek and silent, as if the darkness itself bent to his will. Lily froze, her heart hammering, every nerve alight with a mixture of fear and anticipation. "You're hard to find," he murmured, his voice a low purr that vibrated through her chest. He leaned against a lamppost, one hand casually tucked into his pocket, the other brushing a lock of his dark hair back. His tattoos caught the faint light, twisting like shadows across his skin, a promise of danger that thrilled and terrified her in equal measure. I wasn't expecting you," she admitted, cheeks burning, her pulse betraying her. "Neither was I," he said, stepping closer, the air between them taut with energy. "But some things are inevitable." Lily swallowed hard. His gaze was sharp, piercing through her defenses, stripping away hesitation and leaving raw desire in its wake. She tried to step back, to remind herself that he was dangerous, a world apart from her quiet life. But her body betrayed her. Every instinct, every yearning she had tried to suppress, surged forward, drawing her into his orbit. He closed the space between them, his presence overwhelming. "Do you know what happens when someone like me wants someone like you?" His voice was velvet dark, almost a caress. "They don't take no for an answer." Her breath hitched as he brushed a hand against her cheek, gentle yet commanding. The touch ignited a fire in her chest, a wild mix of fear and longing. She had been kissed before, but nothing compared to the weight of his claim, the intensity that made her feel seen, desired, and vulnerable all at once. I don't understand," she whispered, trembling, her voice barely audible over the distant hum of the city. "You will," he said, leaning in so close that she could feel the heat of his body, the power in his presence. "I want you, Lily. Not because it's convenient, not because it's simple. Because I've been waiting for years, and now you're here, and I won't let you go." A gust of wind carried the scent of the ocean from the distant shore, mixing with the intoxicating aroma of his cologne. Her knees weakened. Desire, fear, and a dangerous curiosity tangled inside her like a storm, and then, As if drawn together by some unseen force, their lips met again. The kiss was slow, deliberate and impossibly consuming. Every nerve, every thought, every heartbeat screamed with the intensity of it. Lily felt herself surrendering, not just to the kiss, but to the world he represented, a world of danger, power, and undeniable passion. When they finally broke apart, breaths mingling, eyes locked, the city around them felt smaller, insignificant. In his gaze, she saw something she hadn't expected. A depth of emotion, a promise that went beyond desire, and a shadow of secrets waiting to be unraveled. The city's neon glow reflected off the rain-slicked streets, painting everything in shades of danger and desire. Lily followed him without question, her heartbeat a frantic drum in her chest. She didn't fully understand why she was here, why she was drawn to a man who seemed to exist on the edge of the world she had known, but something in her soul demanded it. He led her to a sleek black car, its surface glinting under the dim streetlights. Doors opened, silently, and she felt the first pulse of something darker beneath the surface. Power, wealth, and danger intertwined like venom and honey. The car ride was quiet, filled with a tension that left her stomach churning. She wanted to speak, to ask questions, but the truth was, she didn't know where to begin. Finally, they arrived at a towering building that seemed to scrape the clouds. The lobby was impossibly luxurious, cold and imposing, marble floors reflecting a world she had never known. Security cameras tracked their every move, and men in tailored suits nodded respectfully as he passed. Lily's pulse raced. The man she had kissed on the beach, soft, magnetic, and impossibly intimate, was also a force to be reckoned with. "This," she whispered, gesturing to the opulence around her. "This is your world?" He smirked, a shadowed curl of lips that made her pulse spike again. "This is part of it. The rest, you'll see soon enough." His eyes darkened, more serious now. "I'm not just some man who shows up on a beach, Lily. My life, it's complicated, dangerous. People in it get hurt. And I will protect you, even if that means putting everything at risk." The revelation should have terrified her. And yet, it didn't. There was something intoxicating about knowing he lived on the edge, something thrilling about being pulled into a world she had never dared enter. Her hands trembled as she reached out, touching his arm. I don't know if I can do this," she admitted. He pulled her closer, and she could feel the raw strength in his body, the kind of man who could crush or protect with equal intensity. "You already are," he murmured, his breath brushing against her ear. "You've stepped into it the moment you let me kiss you. The rest we'll face together." Then, as if to drive the point home, a sudden commotion erupted outside. A sleek black car screeched, voices shouted, and the faintest hint of danger prickled at the edges of her awareness. He didn't flinch. Instead, he moved with calculated precision, scanning every corner of the room, assessing every shadow. "This is my life," he said quietly. "And if you want to be a part of it, you must understand it fully. There's no turning back." Lily's chest tightened. Fear, desire, and adrenaline coursed through her veins in a dizzying mix. She realized she wasn't just attracted to him. She was captivated, ensnared by the man behind the facade, the dangerous world he inhabited, and the undeniable pull between them. Her choice was no longer simple. Stay in the safety of the ordinary world she had always known, or step fully into the darkness, into a life of danger, passion, and the kind of love she had never imagined. The penthouse was quiet except for the faint hum of the city below, a sprawling maze of lights and life. Lily's heart raced as she followed him inside, every step heavier with anticipation. The apartment reflected his world, luxury blended with shadows, elegance with an edge. Marble, floors gleamed under muted lighting, and dark, heavy curtains blocked out the night sky, creating a world entirely their own. He leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, eyes glinting in amusement. "You look tense," he said, voice low and teasing. "Do you always get this nervous around strangers?" "I'm not a stranger," Lily shot back, cheeks warming. She hated how easily her body betrayed. How every inch of her seemed drawn to him, even as her mind screamed caution. He stepped closer, close enough for her to feel the warmth radiating off him. "Oh, you're right," he said with a slow, dark smile. "You've known me longer than you think. You've felt me on the beach, in the cafe, in every fleeting thought since that day." Lily swallowed hard, her breath catching. Every word, every movement seemed designed to unravel her carefully maintained composure. "You're impossible," she whispered, half exasperated, half in awe. "Perhaps," he murmured, brushing a strand of hair from her face. His fingers lingered, ghosting, across her skin with the faintest pressure, enough to make her shiver. "Or maybe I'm just persistent." The air between them crackled. Each glance and movement a carefully orchestrated dance of seduction and power. He circled her slowly, his presence impossible to ignore. "Do you know what I want?" he asked, voice husky, fingers brushing against the small of her back. Lily's pulse thundered. "You've already shown me," she said, a mix of challenge and longing in her voice. He chuckled softly, the sound deep and thrilling, like the distant rumble of a storm. "And yet, I want more. I want to see how far you'll let me push, how much you'll surrender." Without breaking, her cheeks flamed, but a thrill ran through her at his words. She was both terrified and exhilarated. Here was a man who commanded every room, every heartbeat, every thought, and yet he wanted her. He leaned closer, brushing his lips against her ear. "Careful," he whispered. "You're playing with fire, Lily, and I always win." A shiver ran through her, and she realized she didn't care. The danger, the thrill, the undeniable desire, it all called to her in a way she had never felt before. She straightened, meeting his gaze with a defiant spark. "Maybe this time I won't lose," she murmured. For a heartbeat, they stood locked in a charged silence, the world outside fading to nothing. Then he smiled, dark and victorious, his eyes glinting with mischief and something deeper, more intimate. "I like that," he said, brushing a hand along her arm. "You're sharper than I thought, and more tempting." The tension between them was suffocating and addictive, a dance of desire and power that neither wanted to end. And in that moment, Lily knew this was only the beginning. The night had deepened, and the city below glittered like a field of broken stars. Lily sat on the edge of the plush sofa, hands clasped tightly in her lap, trying to steady the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her. Every encounter with him left her trembling, excited, scared, and undeniably drawn to a man who seemed impossible to understand, yet impossible to resist. He entered the room quietly, removing his jacket with careful precision, revealing the tattoos on his arms that told stories he rarely spoke aloud. But tonight, there was a softness in his movements, a subtle hesitance in his eyes as he approached her. He stopped a few feet away, leaning against the doorway, studying her as though trying to gauge her inner turmoil. "You're quiet," he murmured, voice low, almost vulnerable. "Usually you're full of fire." I don't know what to say," Lily admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Her chest tightened at the sight of him like this. Not just the powerful, commanding presence from before, but a man who carried weight she could almost feel pressing down on him. He walked over slowly, taking a seat beside her on the sofa, careful to leave enough space for comfort yet close enough that she could feel his warmth. "I don't usually let anyone in," he confessed quietly, eyes not leaving hers. "Most people see the surface, the power, the danger. But very few ever get to see what's beneath." Lily's fingers twitched nervously. She wanted to reach out, to touch him, to bridge the invisible. wall he had built around himself. "And am I one of the few?" she asked, her voice trembling. Slightly. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and for the first time, she saw the weight in his dark eyes, the loneliness, the burden of responsibility, the scars of a life lived in shadows. "Maybe," he admitted softly, "maybe you're the first person who made me feel like I don't have to hide. You make me want to be more than what this world demands of me, and that terrifies me." A shiver ran down her spine. The vulnerability in his words, the raw honesty she never expected, wrapped around her heart like a fragile thread. She reached out, placing a tentative hand on his arm. He didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned slightly into her touch, a silent acknowledgement that he was letting her in, letting her see the man behind the darkness. For a long moment they sat like that, the city's hum outside a distant murmur, the chaos of his world paused in this fragile, intimate bubble. Lily realized that beneath his dangerous exterior was a man capable of tenderness, of connection, of love, if she could only navigate the treacherous path to reach it. When he finally spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper, but it struck deep. "I'm not perfect. I'm not safe. But with you, I want to try." Lily's breath hitched. Desire, fear, and a growing sense of trust wove together in her chest. She understood in that moment that she wasn't just captivated by his power or his danger, she was captivated by the man he allowed her to see, the fragile, vulnerable soul behind the Mafia persona. And for the first time, she felt she could step closer, not just to him, but to the world he guarded, so fiercely, because for the first time she believed he might let her stay. The next morning, the sun rose over the city, casting golden light across streets that now felt anything but safe. Lily tried to lose herself in the ordinary rhythm of life. Coffee, work, the comforting predictability of her tiny apartment. But the memory of last night, of his vulnerability, lingered like a shadow she couldn't shake. Her phone buzzed unexpectedly. An anonymous text flashed across the screen. "Stay away from him, or you'll regret it." Her stomach knotted. She had known stepping into his world came with risks, but seeing the first real threat so directly was a shock. She tried to rationalize it, telling herself it could be a prank, but deep down every instinct screamed danger. Before she could react further, the front door to her apartment clicked. She spun around. Standing there, calm and impeccably dressed, was him. Her Mafia boss, her protector, her danger. His eyes immediately scanned the room, sharp and calculating. "They know you've been in my orbit," he said, voice low, carrying both anger and controlled menace. "They're testing boundaries, and you've been marked." Lily's heart raced. "Marked? What does that mean?" she whispered, panic creeping into her tone. He stepped closer, the heat radiating off him, a stark contrast to the chill in the room. "It means they want to send a message. They want to hurt me. And if they can't get to me, they'll try to to you. That's how this world works, Lily. And that's why you can't be naive about what being with me entails." She took a shaky step back. I don't care. I'm not leaving you." A dark, appreciative smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "I know," he said, brushing a finger lightly along her cheek. "That's why I can't let anything happen to you." The room seemed to shrink, the walls closing in with tension. Every sound outside, the distant traffic, a siren wailing, the faint creak of the building, felt amplified. Lily's mind raced, the thrill of danger mingling with fear and the undeniable pull she felt toward him. Suddenly, his phone vibrated. He read the message, eyes narrowing, jaw tightening. "They're closer than I thought," he muttered, more to himself than to her. Then, his gaze locked on hers, softening slightly. "You have to trust me, Lily, not just with your heart, but with your life." Lily felt her pulse spike, the weight of the danger pressing down on her. Yet she couldn't imagine being anywhere else. The fear, the thrill, the intensity. It all made the attraction between them unbearable, irresistible. He stepped even closer, wrapping an arm around her protectively. "I won't let them touch you," he promised, voice low, almost a growl. "Not now, not ever. You're mine." Her breath caught. The danger outside only made the magnetic pull of his presence stronger. She realized that with him, safety and peril were inseparable, and she didn't want to escape, either. In that moment, she understood. Love with him wasn't safe. It wasn't easy. It was a storm. And storms were irresistible. The night was thick with tension, the city outside pulsing with life as if unaware of the storm, brewing inside the penthouse. Lily's pulse raced, a wild rhythm that mirrored the racing of his own heart. Danger lingered like a shadow at the edges of their reality. But tonight, it felt distant, washed away by the intensity that drew them together. He appeared silently in the doorway, the dim light catching the sharp angles of his face and the dark glint of his eyes. Every step he took toward her was deliberate, magnetic, as if he could bend gravity with his presence alone. Lily's chest tightened, not from fear this time, but from desire. A dangerous, all-consuming desire that had been building since the moment he kissed her on the beach. "You shouldn't be here," he murmured, his voice low, rough with restraint, as if holding back the storm within him. "And yet I am," she replied, voice trembling with anticipation. "Because I can't stay away." He closed the distance between them in a heartbeat, and the air seemed to crackle with electricity. Hands brushed against her arms, gentle yet commanding, igniting every nerve. Ending. The kiss, when it came, was slow and deliberate, a claiming of something neither of them could deny. It carried the weight of all the unspoken words, all the stolen moments, all the danger they had both been hiding from. Lily's fingers tangled in his hair as he pressed her closer, lips moving with a mix of hunger and tenderness that made her knees weak. He pulled back just enough to murmur, "Do you know what I want?" His dark gaze bore into hers, vulnerability and intensity mingling in a way that left her breathless. "You," she whispered, the single word heavy with meaning. "That's not enough," he countered, voice husky, fingers tracing the line of her jaw. "I want all of you, every thought, every heartbeat, every secret." Desire and fear collided in her chest, but surrendering to him felt inevitable, irresistible. She leaned into him, letting go of hesitation, letting the dangerous allure of his world wrap around her like fire and silk. Every touch, every brush of skin, was a dance of danger and intimacy, pulling them closer into a storm that neither wanted to escape. He carried her to the sofa, movements fluid, effortless, like a predator and prey entwined in perfect harmony. Their kisses deepened, their hands exploring, discovering, claiming. Every gasp, every shiver, every whispered name sealed the intensity of the connection between them, an intimacy forged in fire, fear, and undeniable attraction. When they finally paused, foreheads resting together, breaths mingling, Lily realized the truth. Desire was only the surface. Beneath it was trust, vulnerability, and a pull so strong it threatened to consume them both. And yet, in his arms, surrounded by the soft hum of the city, danger felt almost irrelevant, because in this moment, there was only them. The morning light filtered weakly through the curtains, pale and hesitant, much like Lily's confidence. The penthouse felt different today, charged with tension, as though the walls themselves were aware of the storm about to break. She clutched her phone, rereading a message she had received just minutes ago. "I saw him with someone else. Be careful." Her stomach twisted, a knot of fear, confusion, and disbelief forming. She wanted to call him, confront him, demand the truth, but a voice inside warned her. Maybe it was better to wait, to measure, to protect herself from the heartbreak she felt looming. When he entered the room later, impeccably dressed and as composed as ever, she could barely meet his gaze. The usual magnetic pull, the fire of desire, felt clouded by doubt. "We need to talk," she said carefully, voice tighter than she intended. He paused, tilting his head with a faint smile, unaware, or pretending unaware, of the storm brewing in her. "Of course," he said, calm as always, though there was a shadow in his eyes. She couldn't read. I saw something," she stammered, words stumbling over themselves. "Someone said, I don't know. They saw you with another woman last night. Her voice trailed off. The fear and hurt she'd been bottling up threatening to spill. His expression darkened instantly, and for a moment she thought the storm had broken too. Late. He looked hurt, not just by her accusation, but by the implication that she doubted him. "Lily," he said slowly, voice low and steady, "you believe what people tell you without knowing. The truth? I just..." She tried, but her words faltered. The swirl of uncertainty in her chest made it impossible to articulate the mix of desire, fear, and hurt she felt. He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "Do you really think I would betray you? That I would lie to you? That after everything, the moments we've shared, the trust I've tried to build, you'd believe a rumor over me?" Her eyes welled up. Part of her wanted to throw herself into his arms, to feel the warmth, safety, and passion they had shared, but another part recoiled, scared and vulnerable. I don't know," she whispered. He took her hands in his, firm but gentle, locking eyes with her until she could see the truth, beneath the layers of danger and power. "Lily, I don't live in a world where love is easy. I don't live in a world where trust comes without risk. But every choice I've made has led me to you. Do you believe me?" The weight of his gaze, the honesty in his voice, and the undeniable pull of desire made her chest tighten. Doubts lingered like shadows at the edges of her mind, but the undeniable truth burned brighter. She wanted him, feared him, and trusted him all at once. She nodded, almost imperceptibly, letting the fragile thread of trust reconnect between them. I believe you," she murmured. He leaned down, pressing a soft, possessive kiss to her forehead. "Good," he whispered. "Because there's no one else, only you, only us. And if anyone tries to come between that..." His gaze darkened dangerously. "They'll regret it." The night was thick with fog, wrapping the city streets in a damp, eerie silence. Lily had ventured out for a simple errand, something mundane she hoped would restore a semblance of normality. But the moment she stepped into the alleyway, instinct screamed danger. Footsteps echoed behind her, slow, deliberate, threatening. Her heart raced. She picked up her pace. But the shadows seemed to stretch, closing in around her. Panic clawed at her chest. She wished desperately that he were there. Her protector, her storm, her temptation incarnate. "You shouldn't have come here alone," a familiar deep voice said from the shadows. She froze. His eyes, dark and commanding, emerged from the mist. The man who had haunted her dreams, consumed her thoughts, and upended her ordinary world, now stood before her, dangerous, powerful, and impossibly magnetic. Before she could react, a figure lunged from the darkness, aiming a strike that would have caught her off guard. He was faster. In one fluid movement, he intercepted the attack, his hands a blur as he disarmed the stranger and pinned him effortlessly against the alley wall. The movement was precise, practiced, lethal, and Lily's heart raced not from fear, but from awe and a pulse of undeniable desire. "You're mine," he murmured, brushing a strand of hair from her face as his body loomed protectively over hers. "And anyone who dares touch you will pay." Lily's breath caught. She wanted to protest, to tell him she could handle herself, but the look in his eyes silenced her. This was more than protection. It was a claim, a promise wrapped in danger and desire. He turned back to the attacker with a cold, lethal calm. One warning glance, one controlled movement, and the man crumpled to the ground, incapacitated but alive. Lily's chest heaved, fear mingling with adrenaline, and she realized just how deep into his world she had stepped. He finally faced her fully, dark eyes softening. "Are you hurt?" "No," she whispered, shaking, "but thank you." He smiled, a brief, rare softness in his dangerous demeanor. "You don't need to thank me. You need to trust me, always." Her lips trembled, and before she could think, she leaned into him, pressing her forehead against his chest. His arms wrapped around her, warm and protective, and for the first time, since this whirlwind began, she felt truly safe. Not from the world, but in his presence, in the storm that was him. "You scare me sometimes," she admitted softly, voice barely audible. "And yet," he murmured, brushing his lips against her hair, "you keep coming back. You're braver than you think, Lily, and I can't let you go." The tension between them shifted, softening into intimacy. Danger still lingered, but in that embrace, the chaos of his world and the thrill of their connection fused into something undeniable: trust, desire, and a promise neither could ignore. Lily realized that love with him wasn't safe, wasn't ordinary, and wasn't predictable. But it was real. And in that reality, she wanted to lose herself completely. The penthouse was silent, except for the faint hum of the city far below. Lily sat on the edge of the sofa, her hands tangled in her lap, watching him. He moved slowly, a shadow of his usual, commanding presence softened by hesitation. Tonight, the playful, teasing man from before was gone, replaced by someone raw, vulnerable, and real. He finally spoke, voice low and heavy. "There are things about me, things you don't know. Things that would terrify you if you understood them fully." Lily's heart clenched. She had glimpsed his world of danger, seen the violence and power that surrounded him, yet she had never imagined the depth of the shadows he carried. "You can tell." "Me," she whispered. "I want to understand you." He sank onto the sofa beside her, a rare closeness that didn't demand intimacy, but invited it. "I wasn't always the man you see. There was a life before the empire, before the control. I lost someone once, someone I should have protected, and I never forgave myself. That loss, it changed me, made me cold, made me ruthless, made me crave power as a shield against weakness." Lily's throat tightened. The man before her, the dangerous magnetic figure who had captivated her, was also a man who had suffered, who carried scars beneath the surface. You blame yourself?" "Yes," he admitted, eyes dark and haunted. "Every choice I made after that was to prevent it from happening again, to protect, to control, to survive. But it also made me someone who struggles to love without fear, someone who fears vulnerability more than anything." Her hand hovered over his, trembling. She wanted to reach out, to touch, to comfort. But more than that, she wanted to show him that vulnerability wasn't weakness. "You're not alone anymore," she whispered. "I'm here. I see you." For a moment, he simply stared, as if absorbing the truth of her words, the sincerity in her gaze. Then, slowly, he reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers with a softness that contrasted sharply with his usual intensity. You make me want to be more than my past," Iwa murmured. "You make me believe I can still be human, that I can still love without destroying everything around me." A shiver ran through her, not from fear, but from the gravity of the moment. The man who had terrified and enthralled her in equal measure was laying bare his soul, something no one had ever done. And in that vulnerability, in that shared understanding of pain and longing, their connection deepened. He leaned closer, brushing a shadowed kiss across her lips. Not fiery and urgent, but tender, intentional, filled with the weight of confession and trust. "I've hidden so much from everyone," he whispered against her mouth. "But I want to share it with you. All of it. The darkness, the danger, the parts that make me who I am." Lily's heart swelled. "Then I'll take it all," she whispered back. "The good, the bad, the dangerous. I don't care. I want you, all of you." For the first time, he allowed himself to truly relax, leaning into her embrace, a man revealed, and a woman ready to follow him into the shadows, into passion, and into trust. The gala was alive with glittering lights, soft music, and the hum of high society. Guests in tailored suits and elegant gowns moved gracefully, champagne glasses in hand, oblivious to the storm about to unfold. Lily's stomach churned with nervous anticipation as she followed him through the grand hall. This was his world. Luxury, power, and eyes that watched her every move. He paused near the center of the room, dark eyes scanning the crowd. "Stay close," he murmured, voice low and commanding. "Tonight, appearances matter, but so does control." Lily nodded, her fingers brushing against his, a tether that kept her grounded amid the dizzying opulence. She had learned to navigate his dangerous world, but even now, a thrill of fear coursed through her. Every glance, every whisper in the crowd felt like a potential threat, or a spark waiting to ignite. Then it happened. A hushed gasp rippled through the room as he took her hand, pulling her, close in a bold, deliberate gesture. "Everyone," he announced, his voice deep and irresistible, echoing through the grand hall. "This is Lily, and I have loved her for years." Time seemed to stop. Champagne froze midair, conversations halted, and every eye turned toward them. Lily felt her face flush, heat racing through her veins. The world she had known, the quiet, muted life she had clung to, was gone. She was now publicly claimed, displayed and vulnerable in ways she hadn't anticipated. "Years," someone whispered behind her, incredulous. "Yes," he said, dark eyes locking on hers. "Years of waiting, years of knowing that no one could ever take her place." Lily's breath caught. She felt a mix of fear, excitement, and exhilaration. The audacity, the dominance, the love. The cocktail of emotions left her trembling, yet inexplicably electrified. But with public declaration came immediate danger. Whispers of envy, rival interest, and power. Struggles flitted through the crowd. Guests leaned in, assessing her, measuring her, some with curiosity, others with thinly veiled hostility. She realized that in stepping into his world, she had become a target, not just his lover, but a symbol of power, desire, and claim. He noticed her tension, brushing a possessive hand along her back. "Don't be afraid," he murmured, lips grazing her ear. "They can stare, whisper, judge. None of it matters. You're mine. Publicly, privately, entirely." Lily's heart raced, caught between fear and thrill. The world outside could watch, whisper, speculate, but in that moment, under his gaze, with his hand firm around hers, she felt untouchable. Desire and danger intertwined, every nerve ignited, every heartbeat syncing with his. For the first time, she embraced the chaos, the exposure, the tension, the intoxicating power of their love. She understood that being with him wasn't safe. It wasn't ordinary. It was a storm. And storms, she realized, were irresistible. The city's night air was thick with tension, electric and oppressive. Lily felt it the moment she stepped outside, an instinctive prickling along her spine, a warning that danger was closer than ever. She had learned to navigate his world, to trust the magnetic force of his presence, but even she wasn't prepared for the storm about to hit. A sleek black car screeched to a halt nearby, and before she could react, men emerged from the shadows, moving with lethal precision. Her breath caught, panic surging, but a familiar shadow surged ahead of her. Him, the Mafia boss, the man who owned her desire and her fear was there in an instant. He moved like a predator, fluid and unstoppable, intercepting the first attacker with calculated force. The fight was brutal, fast, and terrifyingly efficient. Lily's heart pounded, fear and fascination intertwined as she watched him defend her, every motion precise, every strike designed to protect, to claim, to assert dominance. "Stay behind me!" he barked, voice dark, commanding, leaving no room for argument. She nodded, frozen with adrenaline as he dismantled the threat with terrifying ease. Each move, each calculated strike, was a reminder that he lived in a world she could barely imagine, and that she was now irrevocably part of it. The attackers fell back, realizing too late that they were facing a man who combined raw power with ruthless intelligence. He turned to her once the immediate danger passed, eyes blazing, with a mixture of fury and possessive intensity. "Are you hurt?" he asked, voice low, almost growling. "No," she whispered, trembling, "but thank you." He pulled her close, arms wrapping around her, protective and possessive. "You're mine, Lily," he murmured, lips brushing her hair. "No one will ever touch you. Not now, not ever." Her pulse still racing, Lily realized something profound. Fear and desire, danger and love, were inseparable in his world. The intensity of his protection, the rawness of his dominance, ignited a fire within her she had never known. She wanted him, all of him, the power, the danger, the passion. He held her tighter, and for a heartbeat, the world outside, the chaos, the threats, the rivalries, faded. There was only him, only the storm of his presence, only the undeniable claim he had on her heart. "You scared me," she admitted softly, voice trembling between fear and longing. "And yet," he murmured, brushing his lips against hers, "you stayed. You trusted me. That's why you're mine, forever." The city pulsed around them, alive with danger, but within the fierce protective bubble he created, Lily understood the truth. Love with him was not safe, not simple, not ordinary. It was a tempest, and she was irrevocably drawn into it. The sun rose over the city, painting the skyline in hues of gold and crimson. After the chaos of the night before, a fragile calm settled over them. A calm that felt surreal given the storm they all had just weathered. Lily stood on the balcony, the breeze tangling her hair, and finally allowed herself to breathe fully. For the first time in weeks, she felt safe, or as safe as she could ever be, in his world. He appeared silently beside her, the familiar aura of power and danger softened by something tender. He didn't speak immediately, just draped an arm around her shoulders, drawing her close. The warmth of his body, the strength of his presence was grounding, a promise that no matter what, he would protect her, claim her, and never let go. "I thought I lost you," he murmured, voice low and rough with emotion, the usual mask of control, slipping just enough for her to see the man beneath. "You didn't," she whispered, resting her head against his chest. "Not now, not ever. I'm here, and I'm not leaving." His fingers traced the line of her jaw, brushing her cheek with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the danger he exuded. "You've changed everything," he admitted. "Before you, life was just power and survival. But with you, it's love, desire, a future I never thought I could have." Lily's heart swelled at his words. She had seen his darkness, faced his danger, and still, she loved him, not in spite of it, but because of it. The fire, the passion, the shadows, they were all part of the man she had chosen, the man she would follow anywhere. He leaned down, capturing her lips in a kiss that was slow, deliberate, and infinitely claiming. It was a kiss that sealed promises, banished doubts, and fused their hearts together in a bond, stronger than any danger the world could throw at them. Every touch, every breath, every heartbeat spoke of a love both perilous and eternal. I've been in love with you for years, he whispered against her lips, the confession bold, undeniable, and final. And I will spend the rest of my life proving it, publicly, privately, always. Lily smiled through tears, her fingers threading into his dark hair. Then show me. Show me. Everything, no more hiding, no more secrets, only us. He laughed softly, a deep rumbling sound full of triumph and relief. Only us, he agreed. Forever. The city stretched beneath them, vast and endless. But in that moment, it didn't matter. Chaos, the enemies, the shadows, they existed outside this bond, outside this love. Here, in his arms, Lily knew she had found something rare, a man powerful enough to dominate the world, yet tender enough to love her completely. And as they held each other, watching the sun rise, she realized the truth. Life with him would never be ordinary, never be safe, and never be predictable. But it would always be theirs. Wild, passionate, and forever bound.